All right, hello there. Hang on, let me just play about with this. Brilliant, there we go. So today I thought I'd do another little thing for uh, wannabe instructors. Maybe even if you are an instructor, you'll see why this might be important when we cover the leadership aspect of this. But I just thought I'd cover a little bit of leadership, emotional intelligence, and then go into some scenarios that I concocted up um, that might help you to either moving forward towards your assessment or just being better at what we do. And I always think it's important to uh, consider what we do so we can all become as good. I don't know, it's not about being good. Most people that are qualified are good. It's I think there's a reasonable expectation that we develop throughout our careers. We call it continuing professional development, and so that's what this is about. So if I go into like leadership now, the first thing is that most people, when we talk about leadership, what we're talking about is, you know, often it's described as Genghis versus Gandhi. And so certainly if you're doing your ML, you'll become aware that there's if we're in a dangerous situation, often we are more directive. So we veer towards the Genghis Khan, you know, very autocratic. We're doing this, you're doing it now. And then there are times where we might be walking along a nice flat path and we could just go, yeah, just walk on, just stop when you get to that first stile. And we'll all meet up there and we'll stay together. And you can give people a little bit more of a free rein. And that might change due to weather, due to terrain. And that is like one of the simplest forms of leadership. You can then, you know, sometimes that freedom is often called, or can be called, laissez-faire, where we basically we kind of let anything go. There are times when that could work, there are times when that doesn't. Similarly, there are times where you have to be quite careful in that you might want to be doing a um, you might want to be doing a form of like marketing, is what I call it, where you're trying to sell ideas. You know, do we want to walk up this big long slog, or do we want to take this exciting ridge? I've already skewed people's perceptions of what I'm doing, but am I doing it for the right reasons? You know, are you trying to sell it for you to have a better day or for the clients to have a better day? And is that right for the clients? And so those are the sort of things we juggle with in the most simplistic thing. And then one of the things that I covered during my MSc was a thing called transformational leadership. It has these things called the 4 I's, and that's all I'm going to cover on the leadership thing today. And basically, it kind of talks about the idealized influence, the inspiration, motivation, the individual considerations, and the intellectual stimulations. If you stop this video, hopefully you'll be able to read these. And so what we're talking about is the ideal influence is us becoming a good role model. And now most of us in the outdoors, because we live the life and we walk the walk as well as talk the talk, we can often be that inspirational. As I was trying to find some of the stuff for this today, I went back and I managed to find some old reviews of my teaching 10 years ago when I worked for an American company. And some of the things were just, I obviously managed to inspire them, be that through my knowledge, through my teaching methods and stuff like that. And so often what we're just trying to do is, you know, be that appropriate role model. The other one is this inspirational motivation. And so what we're trying to do is inspire and motivate people to be the best that they can. And I think if people see you trying to be the best you can, then often they will follow suit. Um, then you've got this individual consideration. And what this needs to be is I call it like differential learning in what I do. In that, if you've got, whenever I'm teaching, I might have people that are very good and people that are still on the pathway to getting to this level. And I don't necessarily have, if I turn up at a center, I don't have the mechanics to we have sort of levels that we expect people to be at, but people can be at different levels. And so what it's about us being able to chat to the people and work out what they need to learn and what the other person needs to learn, and try and differentiate between the two, so we're not overloading the person that's down here, and we're not being boring for the person that's up here, which again, this comes down to this last thing, which is intellectual stimulation. Now there's this kind of concept of motivation where you have your feared self, your ideal self, and your actual self. And your actual self will pivot between it. It's a sliding scale, it's a spectrum. Some people respond better if they're closing in on their feared self. That's their motivation, is not to be the person they don't want to be. Whereas some people get motivated by being closer to that ideal self. And so often, this is all individual. Different people have different motivations, and it's quite hard to work that out within 10-15 minutes. So what we need to do is provide the right level of intellectual stimulation so that people don't get bored and don't get overloaded. And so if you're interested in just looking at and just asking yourself, find this thing. It's a Wikipedia page. Look at transformational leadership, and ask yourself, how can I be better at being that idealized influence? How can I be more inspiring? How can I make my coaching more individualized? And how can I make that individualization more intellectually stimulating for the person or people involved? And it's a very difficult thing, and there is no right or wrong answer, but it's just another model of leadership where if you look into it, you might find that there are things that you can do that help develop that skill. And at its very least, if I'm on an ML assessment, what I'm looking for is to see people change that leadership. So when they're on steep ground, they're more directive, and when they're on sort of less serious terrain, more footpath, that they a little bit more relaxed. And what kind of information do you impart on people throughout the day to keep them stimulated, to keep them motivated, and to help them become better at what they want to do? Often when we're leading people in the mountains, it's because they actually want to become more independent in the mountains. So what's the next one? I think it's this one. Yeah. So this very, very, what's the word? Tangentially runs into what I'm going to call emotional intelligence. Now, there is nothing. Oh, let me. Got to go back over here. Maybe if I do that. Yeah. There is nothing in any of the syllabus that says you need to know anything about emotional intelligence. But when I was working for an American company, we were trying to develop people into being instructors. We had about 50% of the people were ex-military because they were paying for the course through or what the Americans have a thing called the GI Bill, which is what it did. It allowed ex-GIs to kind of go to college, and they registered themselves as a college. And what we found is those people who we had, those students, they came from a military background where, you know, a lot of it is very autocratic. But what we need them to do is understand that there is more to it than just being like, this is this, that is that. And so we added in like this emotional intelligence, and there are 5 kind of parts of it: self-awareness, self-control, empathy, relationship building, and motivation. And this is just going to be a very quick look at that. So self-awareness is to know one's own emotions, strengths, weaknesses, drives, and values. Self-control involves controlling and redirecting one's disruptive emotions, impulses, and adapting to changing circumstances. I will go into how I'm not very good at that at times. Empathy is, considering other people's feelings, walking a mile in their shoes. And then relationship buildings is, if you show empathy often, that will result in better relationship with somebody. And then the motivation. So often, I know that I have certain things that trigger me emotionally. And when I'm outdoors, I sometimes have to I have to control those. I don't often get it when I'm working outdoors. Often I get it in a more indoor working environment. It links to, self-control. We are trying to manage those triggered emotions. One of the last times this happened to me, I'd injured myself at work, and a boss was trying to tell me that if I left the work, it would be seen as resignation. And I definitely verbally abused him. I can't really say on here what I said to him, but it was, pretty bad. I removed myself from the situation. I went and talked to somebody independent, and I calmed down, and I went back and saw him about an hour later, apologized for my outbursts, tried to explain what it was, tried to explain why I found what he said quite offensive to me. And so it's, for me, it's an ongoing journey, these things of like us trying to understand. So the other thing we're looking at here is empathy. So this is a scenario. So let's say you're heading to a single six sports venue. You have to you play this. I did a lot of role playing with the students. So I told one was a student 1 and one was student 2, and you have student 1, student 2, and the coach, and we all play different things. And what we tried to get people to do was listen, parrot. So to show that you've understood what they're saying, you would speak it back to them in for what so if somebody says I feel like this because of this, is this, you would say, from what I understand, you feel like this because of X, Y, and Z. And so in this situation, you've got student 1 wants to lead 6B and above, but the climbing partner you've been stuck with on this course for the day is struggling with French 5, and you feel frustrated because you're having to deal with the weakest member of the group. And similarly, the poor other student who isn't a very good climber feels like they've been shoved with the rope gun of the course, and they feel intimidated, and they don't want to be the one perceived to be holding that person back. And it's a question of, what could you say as the instructor to help these people? And often it comes down to, is like, this, for the this person is worried about holding you back, but this person is worried about, and often it's about being honest and trying to, once you've parroted back, you've listened to what they're saying, you parrot it back, and then you can try and reach an understanding. So in this situation, it's like you're at a sport climbing crag. You might say to student 2, I understand that you're not as good a climber in, but you don't have to climb the routes he's doing. And actually, the reason that we partnered you up today is you might not be the best climber, but you're one of the better belayers. And actually, this guy needs a good belayer. And you tell that in front of student one, you're like, he's not going to hold you back. He's actually a better belayer than most people. And actually, that's what you need, because if you come off because you're pushing yourself, then you want a good belayer. And then it's only fair that you then give their time. And actually, because you're a good climber, that person that's not climbing as well might see some of the technique that you're using that will help them get better. And so, don't think about grade. It's about climb. There's so much more to climbing than just grade. And so if you take that little exercise that you could do, and there are, I might put together a load of scenarios for this at some point, but I might not. I couldn't find them. That's what I was going through my computer for this morning. But if you imagine that empathy exercise, do you think you're going to develop a better or worse relationship with both students? One of the biggest things with issues between people is often miscommunication or misaligned kind of aims. And, some people will have a certain expectation of what's going to happen on the course, and actually what you need to do is go beyond that expectation and realign them and let them know that actually what they're expecting wasn't what was promised on the course. So expectation management. And then finally, the other thing about emotional intelligence is, being aware of what motivates you or your clients, or what demotivates them. That whole, do they strive to be the ideal person, or do they strive to not be the feared person? I think that one's called self-discrepancy theory, if you want to look that one up. What can you do to avoid being demotivated and focus on the motivation? Because what we'll find is, if anyone's motivated to do something, they'll work harder to get it. And the other thing is reframing stuff. If somebody's not motivated by an exercise, and this is one of the things we struggled with the Americans, was, especially the ex-military people, they had this expectation that being a rock climbing instructor was going to be like, hanging on, climbing hard. And, for them who hadn't climbed before, it was more about teaching them how to climb before they, teaching them to run before they can walk. And so we added in things like the emotional intelligence and other more humanistic skills, so that the people that we were working with could understand that, when we're holding them back and getting them to consider what they're climbing, that's actually a skill in itself to choose an appropriate route, not only for them, but for the clients they would be with. So that is a couple of things on leadership and emotional intelligence, just as an aside. And then this one, let me just go, I think it's there, is one of my mentees was interested in, they were quite happy with the nuts and bolts of their rescuing. So oh no, try that one. I'm just gonna try and make this a little bit bigger. They were quite concerned about, they were quite happy, with their I'm messing about with this. There you go. They're quite happy with the fact that they could do all these things. They could, does that show up? Yeah, they could escape the system, they could haul, they could traverse rescue, they could lead climber rescue, they could do snatch and counterbalance rescues, and they could rescue an abseiler from a fixed line. And in the American system, it's really interesting. I think in the American guide system, they have like a set piece. So you have to go through a certain number of rescues in a very laid out manner, but you do it to a time limit. So basically, you could learn how to do it by numbers, if you like. How this is assessed in the MCI is we set you a scenario where there isn't necessarily a set answer. You have the tools of those are the tools that I've mentioned up here, and you have to critically think which tool you're going to pick from the toolbox. Now, hang on. In this piece of paper, I just say that, you know, we know that if I had to put a screw into a piece of wood, I could pick up a hammer and drive it home with brute force and ignorance. But actually, a screwdriver would be a much better tool for that. But actually, an even better tool than that would be a powered screwdriver with a self-tapping screw. But if you're a carpenter, you actually know that it'd be better to pre-drill a pilot hole and then screw it in. And so what this whole idea of these scenarios is about you thinking through what tools you have and how you can come about them. And I've deliberately not given any answers, and I might not give any answers because I don't want people to just go in thinking that there is a right or a wrong way. There are many shades of grey in this world. And so what I will do is, if, you know, for the people that I mentor, and again, I'm always happy to have more people to mentor at the moment. I've not got very much on because of my back issues. So I'm a little bit, I've got a lot of free time. And this was specifically written by me for one of my mentees who wanted to have this help with critical thinking. So within this, there are things from, you know, somebody can't undo a HMS carabiner from a belay when you're bringing them up. Get a foot stuck in a crack, a rope jammed on a sport route, people not being able to follow a specific move. There are, and it kind of goes through, and there, I think, yeah, look at that spelling of scenario there. Good grief. You know, who'd have thought? And so there are 10 scenarios for you to work through. I would suggest that, you know, if you're working through these, you either think through them fully or write them down. And you don't have to discuss them with me. You could discuss them with another MCI trainee, another MCI. That, you know, there's this joke we always used to say when I was at work, you know, if you went into a room with 3 MCIs and asked the questions, you'd get 4 different opinions. And that's what this is about. This is about you working out how you would address it. And as long as it's safe and efficient and, you know, achieves what you need to achieve in that situation, then the chances are you would pass your assessment. You know, the problem is if you do something dangerous, or maybe you you know, you don't actually understand the scenario. So often, you know, you're more than welcome, I think, during the assessment to, you know, okay, so this is it's that parroting back thing again to get the empathy. So, you know, when I mentor people in ML and they're given a point, I encourage that person to say, right, so from what I understand is you want me to go to this point here, which to me is this, and you describe the point to them. And that way you've clarified the problem. So, you know, you would ask the assessor to go, okay, this is the thing. What I'm thinking is, you know, I would have to have got to this person in record, you know, in as quickly as possible, or actually, I just want to do this safely because, and so this then, I'm about to do this. I haven't done this yet. But I'm going to put this up on my Discord server. It's kind of like a message board that is private. You sign up. If you want to, I'll try and put it in the comments below. But again, there are things like, so I've done there's actually a complete copy of a book that I self-published, Effective Coaching. There's the skills assessment that I went through the other day. It was a long video with Tej, and you've got numbers and an Excel file. There's the Craig list, which was on my thing. There's this thing from Malcolm Gladwell called The Art of Failure, which is all about performance catastrophes. This question came up of, are students ready to lead? So I talk about that. There was a question came up about climbing VS4C, and I've given a little bit of an answer here. And what I'll do is, let's, if I just go Bosch, upload a file, MCI rescue picture, rescues. They come up, think through the issues and problems, to come up with an appropriate solution. With peers, see eyes or mentors. Oh, there we go. It's just sending it up there now. And yeah, if people are interested, or if you have specific questions coming towards your training and assessment, please get onto one of my social media. So your best bet is probably Facebook or YouTube, both on there. You can send me an email via mark.reeves@mac.com. And yeah, good luck with it. And hopefully this will help one or two people on their journey to becoming a mountaineering climbing instructor. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop all this and go. Yeah. So yeah, we're just going to call that a day. We've done about, I don't know, that's like 45 minutes of me ranting. Yeah, I hope you find that of use. I'll just go on here just to check. Yeah, nobody chatted there, nobody chatted there, and nobody chatted there. Brilliant. So hopefully you will find all that helpful in your journey to becoming a better mountaineering climbing instructor. I mean, you could actually be doing your RCI, your mountain leader, anything like that. And again, I don't work for mountain training or any organization. I don't provide these things. I did used to be a mentor for the Association of Mountaineering Instructors, but because I'm not working, I'm no longer a member of the association. And so I'm just offering this out of the kindness of my heart for people, because I think it's areas where, everyone can try and get better. Okay, bye for now. Have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.